Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Shuck. I am currently the chair of the Global Alliance of Speech-to-Text Captioning. I am not in my home office today, which might be very apparent to you. So I'm going to open up this Empower Hour and then be turning it over to Steve Clark, our immediate past president, who will be running the show for you today and rolling out this model. On screen, you also see Julia Emerson, who is currently our vice chair. Hi, Julia, welcome. First of all, I want to thank you so much for your patience and understanding in us having to postpone this event from last Friday. We appreciate your patience in that regard. There was an unforeseen conflict, and so we are glad that you were able to join us today. I want to thank Stacy Potenza for being our real-time captioner today. Thank you so much, Stacy. Glad that you were able to fit us into your schedule again today. Before we get started, I just want to say that this Empower Hour will be focusing on the NER model, also known as the NER model. Steve will explain how it works and what our task force has been doing in this regard for the last 2 years to get us to this point. We will strictly focus on the model itself and how we will be using it to move forward. Any questions that might be regarding compliance issues at a country level, we will take those offline, and we might do another Empower Hour to focus strictly in that regard. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Steve. Thank you so much.
Okay, just to make sure, Jen, you can hear me. Everyone's hearing me okay? Okay, great. Well, I am the cause of us having to postpone last week. My day job, as often happens with all of us, kind of got in the way and made it impossible for me to make that call, but I do appreciate everyone showing up today. As Jen mentioned, this is being recorded, so we'll be able to use this also for anyone who's not able to join us. As Jen mentioned, I'm the immediate past chair of the Global Alliance. I'm also on the task force and the committee that is for our certification and assessment committee. We have been working using the NER model to create our certification and assessment, which we have settled on a name. It's going to be known as the NCSP, which stands for NER Certified Speech-to-Text Provider. And I am going to be talking about the NER, which is not something that we created. It was all that hard work was done by a gentleman named Pablo Romero Fresco, who is in Spain. He was one of our founding members. He was one of our original board members. He's still a member of the Global Alliance, and he fully supports us using his method to create our certification and assessment. So some information about the NER, and I've got some slides that I'll be sharing with you here in a moment. But the NER model is a method for determining the quality of live captions. And unlike the WER, or the word error rate method, which is a simple measurement of words spoken and how many of them are transcribed correctly, the NER places emphasis on meaning, and more specifically on idea units and how accurately they are captured in the captions. The NER also looks at the captions from the consumer or the user's perspective. So how are the NER scores calculated? And this will be in one of the slides that I'll show you in just a moment. But the NER measures the number of what are called addition, EDITION, and recognition errors deducted from the total number of words in live captions, including punctuation marks. That number is then divided by the total number of words in the live captions and multiplied by 100. So a score of 100 would indicate that the content was captioned perfectly. Let me pull up some slides here. So I know we had some recent folks pop in. I see that Jen's handling those, but give me just a moment here and I'm going to share a few things on my screen. So everyone able to see my slides here okay? Okay, great. And if you give me just a moment, I got a text from co-presenter who's going to help with some information. Okay, she's in now. Okay, so if you notice Chris Ailes, she is a voice captioner. I should have mentioned I am a steno captioner. And Chris has joined us. She has done just a huge amount of work on this, including sourcing of materials. And she and I have worked many hours on this along with our fellow task force members. I will say that those members are comprised of steno captioners, voice captioners, and one gentleman who is a representative from industry. And we have had caption consumers who have contributed to the work that we've done here. Before I move on, I just want to make sure to put in a plug. And if you're not a member of the Global Alliance, there has been a much better time than now, but now's a great time. So we would welcome you. We are happy to have as many members as we can get. Frankly, we don't have enough. We need more membership. We need those members to be as involved as you can, whether it's on this committee or otherwise. We really need to get everyone who's working with us and following us to become a member and to really contribute as much as you can. So we appreciate you doing that. If we can answer any questions in that regard, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. So I've got some slides here. Just a quick presentation of the NER, some highlights, and then I have another document. I will show you some additional information. It will include some examples of errors and how those are graded. And then we have time for questions. Our presentation is going to take us probably 15 minutes or so. So we're really looking to answer as many questions as we can. This is a work in progress. So if there's anything we can't answer right now, we will definitely take that information and we will be sure to follow up with you. As Jen posted in the chat box, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in there and see if we can answer them right now. If not, as I said, we promise we'll get back to you very soon offline. So looking at our first slide, introducing the NER evaluation method, which was developed by Dr. Pablo Romero Fresco. And here is some information about Pablo. For all of you and for our captioner, Stacy, as amazing as she is, I am not going to read this to you, particularly to save us all from my poor Spanish and from Stacy finger spelling some of these words. So here you have a bio of Pablo. You can certainly do some research online if you need to find some additional information. Moving on to our next slide. So some basic requirements for any model of assessment. First, it should be functional and easy to apply, and we believe the NER is. Second, includes the basic principles of the word error rate, using the word error rate calculations in SR or speech recognition. And by that, we don't mean only automated speech recognition. We mean any speech recognition, recognizing that we have members who use steno, who use voice, and who use ASR as well. And as you know, we welcome all of those methods. We welcome them all to test with us and to be graded equally by us in order to earn our certification. Basic requirement also that different programs do require different editing. And by that we mean if you're captioning a news program, the type of editing that you as the captioner or the captioning method would do is going to be different from what might take place in an art history class that you might be captioning remotely or even on site for a student. As I keep pausing here, I'm checking our chat window to make sure I'm not missing anything directed at me. We recognize the possibility of edited and yet accurate re-speaking or voice or steno, and we'll get into that a little bit here. And I just want to mention, Chris, as I'm going through this, if you want to jump in at any time, please feel free. One moment here while I Also to compare subtitles or captions with the original spoken text. Subtitles is used often in Europe to refer to captions. So if you see that here, it does mean what we in the US think of as captions. Because we are global, we try to gear this as much as we can to all of our members, including those in Europe and in Australia. And the last thing that we take into account is including other relevant information when grading or doing a review of the assessment that was taken. The delay in the captions appearing, the positioning of the captions, the speed at which the captions appear. So just pardon me, a quick note about the WER model and what it is. WER measures the number of words in a sentence that are inserted, that are deleted, or that are replaced. And our next slide will illustrate an explanation of the calculation for that and how it's applied in a sentence. So with the traditional WER method, you see here this chart that shows the D representing deleted words, the S representing mistranslated words, and the I representing inserted words. So you can see where the first sentence is what was actually spoken, and the second sentence is what was actually captioned, and the type of errors that those would be graded as. So what does NER stand for? The N stands for the number of words in the live captions. The E stands for addition errors, and we'll explain those in following slides. And the R stands for recognition errors, which we'll also explain as well. There's a paragraph here about the application of natural language processing and what it means, and we've got an explanation here too. We left that in because, again, we do plan to use this to test the three methods of captioning that I described: speech or voice steno, and automated speech recognition. Okay, next slide, the NER model and assessing guidelines. So as I explained earlier, how the score is determined. And we took some feedback that had come in from consumers on different platforms, different social media sites. And as you can see here, some of the thoughts that came from captioners, which we really, pardon me, consumers, we really value the consumer's opinion. We don't want to use a model necessarily that doesn't take that into account. So you can see the first one, these are errors, yes, but you can easily figure out what the correct word was meant to be. I'm deaf, not stupid. Second one, thanks to live subtitling, I'm now bilingual. I can speak English and teletext or captions or subtitles. And the third one, as far as I'm concerned, they are not errors, but lies. And you'll see what is meant, what that is referring to when we talk about some of what are called serious errors. So here we have the types of errors. We have the independent idea unit. We're going to get to the types here in a second. And that's really what NER does, is it takes the idea units, whether they're independent or dependent, and depending on the error or the information that is incorrect or perhaps missing, it determines how it's going to be graded. So an independent idea unit, as it says, is often a sentence which may be composed of a subject that is a dependent idea unit, and it makes sense as a full message. And then the dependent idea unit within the independent is going to complement the independent. So it's going to be the who, what, when, where, and how. So let's talk about addition errors. Give me just a moment. I'm going to try to hide the, I'm looking at the panel that has all of the participants. Let me hide that. Almost there. One moment. There we go. Okay. So a serious error, which is going to be where the previous quote talked about it being a lie. A serious error is an addition error that causes a change of meaning. So misinformation or even a lie would be appearing in the captions. One of the examples you'll see here shortly will make that very clear to you. A standard error is marked at a 0.50 deduction, and that's omission of a full independent idea unit, or an omission of a dependent idea unit that renders the whole unit to be meaningless or nonsensical. And then the minor error is a smaller deduction, and that's the omission of a dependent idea unit that doesn't render the whole unit meaningless, but just removes a part of it. And I should say that these names we are still considering. I think we're leaning toward changing the name of one, and that is standard. Instead, I think what we're going to actually changing to, I believe we're going to have minor, major, and critical, but they still will have the same severity and they still will have the same deduction. Make sure. Okay, so here is, very good. There we go. So, and a couple examples of minor recognition errors. So the first one on the left, you see what was spoken is what a great goal, pardon me, that's what was captioned. What was spoken is on the right. What a great goal by Ryan Giggs. The captions read what a great goal by a Ryan Giggs. It's a minor error because the consumer is still able to very quickly get past that error and realize, oh, that A was inserted incorrectly. But it still gives you all of the main idea or the independent idea unit, which is a great goal was scored by Ryan Giggs. Another example of a minor recognition error, the captions read, 4 people are still missing following Sunday's tornado, but pardon me, that's what was spoken. And the captions came out as 4, F-O-R, rather than F-O-U-R. So it says 4 people are still missing following Sunday's tornado. Now, the consumer, again, is very quickly able to recognize, oh yeah, that should have been the number 4 rather than the word 4. An example of standard recognition errors. So on the right-hand side, he's a valuable asset, but the captions read, he's a buy you a bowl asset. The captions were not recognized properly. And in this case, the consumer might be able to figure that out, but it's more unlikely because it's not as simple as the F-O-R versus F-O-U-R error. And then another example of a standard recognition error. What was spoken is it really a temptation? And you can see the captions here appear as, is it really a tendtation? You might be able to mold that over long enough to figure out, oh, that should say a temptation. But most consumers are going to more quickly move on and continue reading the captions, I believe. And so that would be counted as a higher error, a higher deduction than the other that we just looked at. And then here's an example of a serious or critical, the type of error that is marked at the highest deduction. So what was spoken is public funding for universities has been cut by 50% this year. What was captioned is public funding for universities has been cut by 15% this year. The consumer, unless there's a graphic that appears on the screen showing that, is not going to know that the captioner made that mistake. So that is counted as a much more serious error and a much more serious deduction. And then the last example here, he never talks to Rudy. If the captions appear as he never talks dirty, that sentence by itself does make sense, but it gives you the complete nonsensical information that doesn't get across even the fact that Rudy was part of that discussion. Just a couple of final slides here, and then I have one more document we'll take a look at. And the first one, actually both slides are where the NER model is being used now. So you can see here that we see that it's being used in Canada, it's being used in Spain and in Brazil by the British government. A few more examples here of where it's being used, including in France, Italy, and a few other countries that you see listed there. Last slide is just some information on how you can reach both me and Chris, as well as emailing to our info email address. And I do have one other document that I'm going to show you here. This next document is something that one of our members provided for us. He is using this document and was kind enough to let us use it as well. So we're going to just show some additional, kind of repeating what we talked about. The graphics that are here were not ours. So again, we're just using a document that was provided to us so that we could get this information across during this session. Just again, explaining the difference between an addition error and a recognition error.
Steve, I have to interrupt you.
Please.
Only because we're still seeing the PowerPoint.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you.
That's okay.
Give me just a moment to stop and change my share. We all, as captioners, use Zoom every day, and we always laugh that someone doesn't know how to stop sharing. And then we get asked to do it, and we don't know how to stop sharing. Give me just one moment. Chris, while I'm figuring this out, have I missed anything? Is there anything that you want to add?
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Chris.
No, the PowerPoint was meant to be as informative as possible. I don't think we really missed anything.
Okay.
Michelle Michaels has a question.
Yeah, why don't we look at questions while I'm still struggling here to stop my share. I think I almost found it though.
Steve, try sharing again.
Yep, I see what you did. Okay. Michelle, I see your question is, how does NER differ from FER? And I've got to be honest, I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar. Well, I'm not familiar at all with FER, but if you want to give us a tutorial, I'd be happy with it. I know there are so many methods out there. Jen and I have learned about some recently, but I could certainly do some research on FER.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I've heard about NER, FER, and WER, and so I was just curious because I really don't know how that all works, and so yeah, what do you got there? You got something good looking?
Yeah, I've got another document that I'm going to share. We'll get through this in just a couple of minutes. Allow me a moment to change. So everyone's seeing the document I have up now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So give me just a moment to get to it. There we go. Okay. So again, this was shared with us by one of our members. So any of the graphics are not ours, but I really wanted to take advantage of being able to share the information. So we talked about addition errors, and this gives a little more information saying that they are usually caused by a decision of the live captioner to edit or to omit original spoken text. And it could be because the speech rate was too fast, and that these errors represent the loss of an idea unit, which we talked about, which is a piece of information. So here you have some examples which line up with what we talked about as far as the deductions. One thing we haven't talked about is what's called a correct addition. And that is where information may be omitted or may be changed, but it doesn't in any way change the meaning or take away information that keeps the consumer from fully understanding. The example I always give is if someone says, we plan to meet by Zoom also, but the captions read, we plan to meet by Zoom to, T-O-O. That would be a correct addition. It doesn't change the meaning. It doesn't in any way keep the consumer from getting all of the information and fully being able to follow what was said. Another example I wrote down just while I was waiting for us to get started here. If what is spoken is US President Joseph R. Biden met with UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to discuss the COVID-19 pandemic response by all nations around the world. That would be exactly what was said. If that gets shortened to US President Biden met with UK Prime Minister Johnson to discuss the pandemic response by all nations, about 10 words are left out, but you're still hearing the US President and his last name. We're omitting his first name and middle initial. You're still finding out that he met with the UK Prime Minister, including his last name. And we shortened COVID-19 pandemic response to pandemic response. So those kinds of changes, while it helps the captioner to keep up if we're using voice or steno, it doesn't take away any vital information to the consumer, and it doesn't change the meaning of anything. I see we have Arlene raised her hand. Arlene, why don't we let you ask your question? Actually, if you would type it into the chat window, if that's doable, and if it's not too burdensome as far as maybe being a longer question, that would, I think, help.
It's more of a comment.
Please,
I'm
go
a
ahead.
user, and I think it's valuable for a user to tell you how we use captioning, whether it's exactly precise or not.
Okay.
And one example in my lifetime was before my cochlear implants. I was totally dependent on captioning, and I'd written a eulogy for my father's funeral. And the person doing the captioning, you all know him, but I won't mention names, did not have the eulogy in front of him and was listening. And I used the word physique, P-H-Y-S-I-Q-U-E. And I saw come up on the captioning shape. He didn't use the word physique, and I knew why he did that. And I just was so, it just meant a lot to me that he could do that immediately, understand what my needs were to get the gist of it out and not necessarily use every single word. So what you're pointing out here on a practical basis for people who actually use this stuff is critical. We don't really care about that middle initial. We want to get it all so we can kind of figure out what's going on. So yeah, your point is very well taken. So
Great. Thank you for that, Arlene. I love the example, and that kind of thinking on your feet or in the heat of the moment is what captioners do every moment that they're captioning. So it's great to hear that kind of affirmation.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me tell you that.
Definitely. One more part of the slide over on the right-hand side, just an explanation of recognition errors. And I'm sorry, I'm just checking the chat here. Okay. All right. FER, according to Julia, the percentage of word errors when formatting elements such as punctuation, grammar, speaker identification, non-speech elements, capitalization, and other notations being taken into account. It sounds in some way similar to the NER. The NER does take into account things like punctuation. And I think capitalization would be one of those minor errors. If you have a name that appeared as Mark with a lowercase m instead of uppercase m. So it sounds in a lot of ways very close. Okay, I'm going to move down to the final part of the slide here, just some more examples that I think are really helpful. So the first one is on the left-hand side, the sample good edition or good editing. So you see the original spoken context on the left-hand side, and it is kind of, well, it is full of a lot of filler. So you have the you know, and they have the kind of, and the repeating at the end. But when you look at the final caption content, and this really, I think, reinforces what Arlene just said, you have all of the content there minus the filler. Now, a good captioner isn't always going to edit that filler. We often will put that in to really show the style of, or the presentation, the way it's being spoken. But those are good natural edits that if we are maybe falling behind, or we don't want to put that in every single time, we can take those out and you still get all of the information. And then on the right-hand side, a sample bad edition. So here you can see some examples of where we have, for instance, where it says 20 somethings, and that's marked as a 0.25 or a minor error. Taking that out removes a dependent idea unit. So the bigger idea unit is still intact. You're just losing that part of it that is an extra element. And then where I met a great guy called Ted is removed, that's a major piece of information. So when it gets shortened to he, you don't know who he is. So that's going to be a more severe error. And then you can see a couple of other examples of minor errors. So the last part we're going to show here, just some examples of sample good recognition and bad recognition. So kilometers, you can see where it shows up as 2 words instead of 1. It still is readable, and you can very quickly realize, oh, that should have been connected. It's a minor error because it doesn't cause that much of a disruption for the reader. And then the second one, where instead of a nanny, it says the nanny, which slightly changes the meaning and makes it a minor error. And then if you look on the right-hand side, sample bad recognition, you can see the first one, which would be a little harder for the consumer to figure out and would be scored higher than the second, where Michelle is spelled differently from the way Michelle Obama spells her name. And then you have the last example, which would be a major error because Michelle said, you can't call me hey you, but the captions read, you can call me hey you, the exact opposite of what was actually said. And again, the consumer may not know, and likely wouldn't know, that that was an error by the captioner, and would believe until either the captions were corrected or it was spoken again that Michelle Obama said that you can call me hey you. I'm going to stop right here. I want to first check with Chris and see, Chris, did you have anything that you want to add to what I just said?
This is Chris. Maybe just as you just mentioned, when the example of you can call me hey you for the rest of our lives, if the captioner uses like a double dash to indicate before they write in the correct you can't call me, that would be most likely considered a correct addition, and because it was corrected in real time. And I think that's really the only other thing I have to add at this moment.
Okay, that's a good point, and I thank you for adding that. So yeah, as Chris said, if the captioner and anyone who watches captions sees this regularly, where the captioner realizes I got that wrong and then writes a dash, corrects the information, and then continues on, we give credit for that, for making that correction, and no information gets lost And as Chris said, that would be considered a correct addition. Jen, would you do me the favor of stopping my share for me?
I will do what I can about
Okay.
that. And Michelle has her hand up.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi. So I want folks to know that I'm really proud of the work that the Global Alliance is doing. This is a young organization. We need lots of people to join and become members, whether you're consumers to provide that consumer input, which is something that I do as a consumer, a user of captions, but also captioners, cart providers, voice writers, people doing ASR, et cetera. We need everybody to join the organization because this certification is going to be so important. You know, and we know, I've been in the hearing loss community for so long, just like Arlene longer than me. And we know that there's been just so many captions out there that are substandard, people producing captions that aren't qualified. And it really is, in many cases, a right here in the United States, an ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act right to have accurate, effective communication. So I'm just, I'm really thrilled with the work that the members have done on this certification. I know that we're trying to make sure that it's objective and not subjective. But I do consider how people who use English as a second language, English language learners, young children who consume captions, their limited ability to understand words, how that will affect them. Whereas, you know, I am college educated, English is my first language. And so my understanding of English, yeah, I can put things together. I can figure things out, but somebody who could be my twin, but have come here from a different country, they're not using English as a first language. And so they may not be able to figure it out. It might seem obvious, but they can't understand that. So I don't know how we get that into the equation. You know, there's, you know, you want certification to be black and white. You don't want gray area, you don't want subjectivity. And I don't know how you allow for that, the needs of the consumers. What a college educated English speaker would understand is different. So that's just some comments. But I came into the organization as a founder and as a private citizen because I was really, really taken by the mission and vision of the organization. And I saw the huge need that we have, whether it's broadcast captioning, whether it's caption phones, the stuff that is out there right now. You know, really, we really need this organization.
Thank you, Michelle, for adding that. We value so much what Michelle says for many reasons, but as a consumer, Michelle gives it to us straight. And I think that it's so valuable having the diversity that we have in our membership. And I think that too often consumers, we reach out to your opinion sometimes, but I'm just really proud that we have consumers so involved, including on our board of directors and guiding us every step of the way and giving us the truth, the hard truth sometimes, the honest, unvarnished opinion, if you will. It makes us better. I wanted to answer one question and then make one comment, and then I'll turn it over to Jen. Julia's question is, so a correct addition would negate the error? The answer is if the correct addition includes correcting the error. But a correct addition by itself really would not be an error, using the also to example that I used earlier, or the example where part of President Biden's name got dropped, but you still knew exactly who we're talking about. The last thing I wanted to recognize is that Gretchen, I believe she is still here, was joining us, and she is from ATSP. And I hope I get this right, Gretchen, Association of Transcribers and Speech to Text Providers. Okay. And
That's right, it's a mouthful.
It is. I'm surprised I remembered it off the top of my head. We met with Gretchen, gosh, it's probably earlier this year now. And we're really excited to be able to collaborate with ATSP. And I'm glad that you could be here. And I hope that what we've talked about is in some way something that we can develop a similar test that would be used for your organization, which I believe, if I'm right, includes those who do Typewell and CPRIT.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are looking forward to that as well. We hope.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm just going to reiterate what we've all said, and that is that our diversity, I think, is what makes us so strong at the Global Alliance. But we need more members. We need more involvement. The group that has been working on this certification, it's a very small group. Chris Ailes did just a huge amount of work. I put in a lot of time as well, and our other task force members and committee members as well. But we're all working full-time jobs, and we're all stretched very thin. So if you want to get involved and you can, that would be great. And as I said, if you have questions outside of today, we can certainly take those by email or offline. And with that, I'll stop and turn it over to Jen.
Actually, there was one question early on in the chat, Steve, that I will just let you share the answer to. It is, will there be a certification for CART and then a separate one for broadcast captioners?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not so sure that we have. Let me step back, and Chris, help me out here if I get this wrong. Right now, we have our initial, we'll call it level 1, just for an ease of reference, certification. And we are planning to create a higher level, so more difficult material that would be a level 2. And we have talked about trying to make these so that they could apply across the board. So it wouldn't just be for CART or for broadcast. But again, this is all still a work in progress. So that's the kind of thing that the committee will finalize. And of course, we have to present all of this to our board, which we're going to be doing soon, get their approval, and then we push forward, and we have the end of January as our planned launch.
And one other comment that is in the chat is from Gia, who, I apologize, Gia, if I've mispronounced your name. It's been so long since I've seen you and been able to talk to you. Gia is in the Netherlands and working on gathering information regarding certification over there. And she just mentions in the chat that at this moment, she's using the LTA modules, which I have sat in on their presentation, but it has been quite some time ago. So I'm not proficient at this point to explain the differences between the LTA modules, which was created in Europe with an immense amount of research. It was funded and got the seal of approval from the overriding authority that governs the European Union, which at this point I'm blanking on their name. But so Gia says that she's using the LTA modules, and they are talking about 4 different categories, and she says that is making sense to her as a working captioner as well. Yeah, I hope the NER model, if I recall, isn't terribly different, but feel free to correct me in the chat if I'm wrong about that. But so I just wanted to share that for everybody. Oh, Chris says she can answer that. So.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat about punctuation being subjective. And when we are correcting punctuation, I don't think, Steve, you mentioned this, but when we do a total word count, we are including punctuation in that total word count. So the words get counted along with the punctuation. Now, as far as what is a wrong punctuation and what is a right punctuation, if it's really clear that they're asking a question and there's a period, that would be counted as an error. As far as the Oxford comma, I don't think that it's going to affect the scores that much, since whoever is captioning and whoever is assessing is basically going to look at the overall idea unit and determine whether that punctuation in any way affects the captioned text, the understanding of the captioned text. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I'll just add to that, Chris, where, and if you said this, I apologize, but how it adds to the word count. I don't think if it does at all, it's going to be major. But the Oxford comma, I'm reluctant to even get into the discussion because everyone has a very strong opinion about it. But I think just generally, if it doesn't change the meaning by not using the Oxford comma, that it would be not an error. At the very most, it would be a correct addition.
But doesn't it count towards the end, the total number? So then couldn't that sway if there was an addition error, or if there was an error and someone didn't, or they did include it or they didn't include it.
Right.
And then that could, so my question is not just to Oxford commas, but like dashes or ellipses. Like how would those, yeah, I guess my question is, does that affect the end count in the end?
Right. I'm going to pass to Chris and ask her, does she know? Because I would have to research that again just to be absolutely certain.
This is Chris. So basically what you're asking is the incorrect punctuation being counted as an error?
No, Chris,
you
does punctuation
clarify?
get counted in the word count?
Yes, punctuation gets counted in the word count. So if we have a program that we use where we take the captioned text and the punctuation in the captioned text, and it will list out, perhaps there's maybe 117 instances of punctuation within the captioned text, and there's 787 words. Well, we would add the 787 to the 117 to get the total word count. Now, when it comes to assessing and we're looking at the punctuation, don't forget, we're not looking at this from a word per word assessment. We're looking at the idea unit. So is the punctuation affecting the idea of what is being said by the person speaking? If it's not, and everybody, we're not live. And as you know, when we do caption, we sort of have our own way of punctuating things. If it's not going to affect it, then no, it's not an error. It's just how they used it as opposed to how it was placed in the transcript. So if it doesn't affect the meaning and the consumer can still get the idea of what is being said, then that is not counted as an error. That would be a correct addition.
Jen, I don't see that we have any other questions, and I think we're getting close to actually making this Empower Hour last for an hour. So I would suggest we stop here unless, Jen, you want to have any, I'll let you wrap it up. But before you do, I know you're going to say this, but I'm going to thank Stacy first. I didn't have the captions on here just to make sure I didn't have more difficulty than I did with my slides. But I just want to thank Stacy for always being there for us and doing a terrific job.
Yeah, Steve, you did steal my thunder. So thank you, Stacy. I know that this was a challenge. this is the type of content that is actually very difficult to caption. So thank you very much. It was a difficult Empower Hour, but as Michelle has put in the chat, she feels more empowered. And I hope that this has helped all of you understand the NER model as we go forward. Look forward for more information about how we will roll out the certification, how it will work, just the logistics behind it. Like Steve had mentioned, this will go to our board. Our next board meeting, I believe, is January 26th. I'm pulling that off at the top of my head, so don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's January 26th and at 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you're a member, please join. Our board meetings are open to everybody. Thank you to Steve and thank you to Chris. The hours that have gotten us to this point is immense and incredible. And I know I am super grateful for it because, as you can tell, it's not an easy topic. It's not an easy concept to grasp when you have been focused your entire career on being 100% verbatim and being able to score tests that way. So we are looking at this from a different perspective to take into account how we actually do our job. And Arlene's example was the exact reason why we are looking at it from this perspective. So thank you so much. Amanda has clarified that the board meeting is January 26th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So thank you for that. Thanks again for everybody thank you for your patience and understanding from last Friday. This will be recorded. If you would like a copy of the recording, please let us know. We will be making this available to everybody, but we are going to open caption it because that's what we do. So thank you all. Happy holidays, whatever holiday you celebrate. Happy New Year, and we will see you all in 2022.